Hello and welcome to another Thursday episode of the 905er podcast and this week's 905 Roundup. My name is Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
And it's still election time, and we're going to start off talking about something that came up in our episode yesterday, and it's come up in a couple of other episodes really, and that is, and you know, don't get us wrong, it's not about people not coming onto our podcast, it's about people not coming on to anything. People can do what they want with our podcast. It's, we don't take it personally. But when people don't turn up for anything at all, ever, anywhere, I think that's another issue and one that we need to discuss. So Joel, there's a really quite an interesting story with regard to the Catholic school board trustee candidates.
Yeah, maybe it's just something in the water here in Halton we should be checking into, but there seems to be a fear amongst candidates running for public office to stand in front of the microphone and answer your questions. At our last episode, we had a regional chair candidate, Andrea Horwath, on to just. She was literally the only one who showed up to the microphone, so she answered our questions. But and her competitors were nowhere to be seen, and that's not a one-off thing for this podcast. That just seems to be a feature of their campaigns, and this extends also into a troubling thing with the trustee races, which is again a bit of editorializing here. The trustees for school board, whether it's Catholic or public, they need to be scrutinized a lot more. These are organizations that have huge amounts of real estate. They have huge amounts of they have huge budgets that they oversee. They oversee massive amounts of sections of labor force here locally in your neighborhood. They are huge power brokers, whether they like it or not, and they need to be properly scrutinized for the time being. Because they have that power. However, at the Halton Catholic Board, something that keeps popping up in this podcast, there are trustees or candidates who are not interested in answering the public. So that preamble done, the Ontario OECTA, the union governing elementary and secondary Catholic teachers in the province, the Halton chapter does a debate. They host a debate for people who show up who want to hear from their trustee candidates and answer questions from the public. This year, that's not happening because too many participants were backing out, flat out saying no, they were not attending, or they were just not responding to the invite, and so the union had to cancel the debates. Not necessarily going to point fingers here, but it is especially this year or this last term where there was such contention and such divisiveness in the board, and there's so many students, teachers, parents that were just hurt by the actions that this board taken. There's a real concerted interest in this year's elections. It is insulting that we don't have public forums to critique and get to know the people that we're going to be electing to this. And it's just, there's a trend of that happening, of just people not showing up to public debates. It's a trend that's, it started underneath the Conservative Party. I'll be honest, and has seemed to have filtered down into the municipal levels of our electoral process. And this is a trend that we should all be very concerned about, regardless of your political leanings.
Yeah, I mean, I'd go so far as to say that, in elections we depend on the goodwill of organisations, whether they be unions, whether they be community groups, whether they be whatever, to organise debates. In Halton, we're not well served by media. Trustee elections are even less well served. I cannot understand for the life of me, why a candidate, when given an opportunity to speak to the public, would ever turn that down. And I will tell you right now, I will never vote for a candidate who has turned down the opportunity to speak at a debate. Never. It is a disgrace to do that. It is incredibly hard to speak to the public as a candidate. There are fewer and fewer ways in which we can speak to the public. The last bastion, or the last sort of tool that politicians had in their podcast to speak one-on-one with people, was to knock on their door. Well, that's now going away because more and more people have cameras on their front doors, and if they don't recognize who's knocking on their door, they're not answering, and that's their right. That's their perfect right. But the irony is, it's very difficult to speak to people. You can pay money to send leaflets that no one wants to read. You can knock on the door and have a conversation that most people don't want to have. You can, and then people have the nerve to say that politicians don't listen. It's like, well, I would if I could get through to you.
I just want to clarify, Roland. Like, my beef isn't just the debates; these are candidates who are refusing to speak and like the fact that we didn't have Gary Carr or Jay McKenna. We extended an invitation at the same time that we extended the invitation to Andrea. We don't hear from them. We've asked Jay McKenna on many a time to discuss various issues back when she was MPP, and there was just stone silence. And maybe this is us. Maybe there's a bit of hurt feelings here, Roland. Who knows?
Well, we've never. I mean, we've as MPP, she was under party orders to an extent.
I'm beginning to question if that was the case.
Well, yeah. I mean, all I can say is we've never spoken to anybody from the Progressive Conservative Party or the Conservative Party, and it's not for want of asking. And I will promise and I will swear on everything that is holy and unholy that we will give a fair crack of the whip to any Conservative candidate now or in the future who comes onto the talk. Anybody who comes on this podcast for an interview will be treated respectfully. They will be allowed to have their say and get their ideas across. What are you scared of? I can only conclude that you are so ashamed of what you have to say and so unconfident in defending those ideas with any kind of ability whatsoever that you simply will not speak. Now, the game of hiding candidates from the public is not a new one. It's been around for decades and decades and probably centuries, probably as long as... However, it is now at an industrial, factory, bulletproof, military-grade avoidance level. People don't just try and steer clear of things. They, the new MPP for Burlington, whose name I can't remember, because why would I remember it? She's a non-person as far as I can see. I mean, somebody I spoke to recently said they'd actually met her, but I don't know her name because she was beyond invisible as a candidate. That has nothing to do with the fact that they're conservatives, and I'm not a conservative. It's to do with the complete contempt for the public that it shows. Now, I mean, Jane McKenna. Okay, let's say that she was under party orders in the past. The most fantastic thing I found about running municipally was the freedom it gave me to speak my mind on any subject for as long as I wanted, or for as long as the good citizens of Burlington were willing to tolerate me on their doorstep. It was fantastic. It's like I'm free of that kind of party responsibility of I've got to make sure I'm saying what the party thinks and not what I think necessarily, and that's not about. I'm not saying that I was controlled or anything. I'm just saying that there's a collective responsibility when you're part of a political party. Jim McKenna's free of that now. I mean, how wonderful is that? You can go and speak and say, these are my ideas. These are the things that show what a fantastic chair of Halton I would be. And silence. Not even the decency to reply to us and give us the old lie that, I'm sorry, I have a prior engagement.
I don't even know if it's necessarily that, Roland. I want to kind of bring it back to the Catholic trustee issue that we So if you're a long-time listener of this podcast, and if you're not, go take a deep dive into our back catalog. We were very critical of the past council for our board of trustees for the Halton Catholic School Board, mostly because we found that a number of them were obtuse, obstructionists, and just didn't would not be open to the fact that they were on the losing side of an argument, particularly surrounding raising of the pride flag in June. That was a long and painful argument that hurt a lot of people's feelings. And so, needless to say, there are people who are. I'm not going to go as far as militant, but they are definitely activists, and they're mobilizing and taking concerted action to make change in that board to prevent the same behavior from taking root again. That's a democracy. They have that right, and they have that they have that calling to follow through in that. We've reached out to two people in the past to say, come on to the podcast, or just we've been waiting to hear from people in various forums around the region, and we don't hear from them. They are silent. I went so far as, we on our Twitter, we reached out to one of the trustees who was more notorious for being obstructionist on the council, Vince Ian Tomasi, and because he tweeted support for Italy's far right new prime minister, who is very controversial, and we thought, yeah, you know what, people might want to know that somebody running for elected office is in support of her, that they think she is the right person for the job in Italy, and whatnot. That kicked off a firestorm. We got plenty of beef from all sides on that one on social media. And to the question that we wanted to pose to him was just, do you share in her anti-LGBTQ views, as well as her pro-life viewpoints? That was it. That was the question we thought maybe your constituents would want to know what the answer to that. We asked on Twitter, maybe it was not the best form, but we have not received a word from that. We heard plenty of criticism on how dare we question his Catholicity, which was never a question that we put forward. And quite frankly, I'm not asking for that. But the question of this is an issue that people might want to know. They might want to know what the answer to that is. And again, that fear of the microphone, that fear of saying, I don't want to say what I truly think, because yeah, your opinion might be in the minority, but here's the thing: you want public office, people deserve to know what you think on these things. And if you don't want to answer that, say no comment and back away.
It also points to another issue, and this is a long-standing one as well. That Vince Ian Tomasi is probably fairly willing to give his opinions on a variety of things. I don't think probably his opinions on abortion are any secret. He's against it. He's a devout Catholic, and a devout Catholic of the conservative end of the spectrum of Catholic orthodoxy, shall we say, and that's his right. That's fine. What's not so fine is it suggests to me that the candidate, basically this was being organised by a union. The Catholic School Board trustee positions have become more and more apparently the birthright of some of the more right wing amongst us, to the extent that the former chair Jane Michaels, who ran for the PCs, was seen as a moderate as the chair, and yet was on the record saying some really quite things that would consider, pretty right wing by any standards. And basically, it's like, well, no, this is being organised by a union, so no, because we hate the unions. And again, it's like, God damn it, the unions are usually the only people who put the bloody work in to organise these debates. Really, are we going to say we are so divided as a society that you can't go to a debate organised by by something that all your teachers are part of, all the people that you're going to be working with day in, day out, not all, but the vast majority, OECTA is a key part of the education and school picture. And if, as a trustee, you should be willing to deal with OECTA, even if you're not a huge fan of what unions do. Again, it's this division in society. No, OECTA, the enemy, not going. Not speaking to the enemy, not engaging with the enemy, not trying to persuade. There's no attempt to persuade anymore. It's like, this is what I believe. If you don't already agree with me, then we have no business talking to each other.
Right.
And I can't accept that. I mean, it's just horrendous.
If we're going to push back from the abyss, the fear among a lot of people these days that our democracy is dying. Our democracy, not just in Canada or the region, but globally, the great Western democracies are on the decline. You can't be afraid of debate. And you have to be willing to defend what you believe. And quite frankly, you have to be willing to step up to the microphone. If you want to run for any kind of office, if you want to earn the respect and the support of people from the get-go, right or left, you need to step up to the microphone and say, this is what I believe, this is what I think we need to do, these are my priorities, and this is what I want to do. You give me power because I think this is how we're gonna fix the problems that we have. And it's not about finding the perfect candidate. It's about finding the least objectionable one, the one that you can say, I can live with you in that position for the next term. And if you succeed, you succeed. If you fail, you fail. But this instant suspicion must reign on all my decisions. It does not serve any of us, any democracy, right? And if you can't answer basic questions, then quite frankly, what right do you have to hold power over any of us? Whatever the level is, whether it's a municipal government, a school trust, a school board, or the premier or prime minister, what right do you have to ask us for our vote, our most precious commodity in democracy, the thing that soldiers have fought and died for overseas to preserve, and that minorities have bled on the streets of this country to be enfranchised with, to have us give that to you, and you can't step to a microphone and answer a few questions. How dare you?
Yeah, and it's like, if you certainly in Burlington, I haven't driven to Oakville or Milton recently, but judging by the streets of Burlington, Jane McKenna is winning the sign war on private land, but on private commercial land. Why would someone who's not speaking to anybody be so popular, do you think, that they would put up large signs along all the main thoroughfares on their commercially owned land? Now, who owns that land, I wonder? Well, goodness me, it's all the developers, isn't it? Well, so the developers, again, this is all perfectly legitimate, and I wouldn't even mention that because it's all traditional and it's all been going on for centuries. I jumped to Paul Sharma's defense the other week on exactly this issue, that you're allowed to do that. Jane McKenna's allowed to do that. However, when you will not speak to the public, the one thing I would say for Paul Sharma is he will speak to anybody. Mm-hmm. He is very vocal. There are no. I repeat myself again. We're very different people, but I respect his willingness to always defend his position and to argue it forcefully and sometimes irritatingly. But that's the way it's supposed to work, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like there's a quote attributed to Voltaire that Voltaire didn't actually say, and it's like, I disapprove of what you say, but I'll defend your right to say it to the death. I mean, it's an old cliche, but it's really what it's about. I think it's like, not only will these people not defend our right to have an opinion, but basically view us as beneath contempt for having our view of the world. they won't even let us know what their point of view is. They're just, oh, I'm Jane McKenna. I used to be an MPP. Vote for me. And I'm picking on Jane McKenna because, well, she's the most visible example of this. But shame on the Catholic School Board trustees for not turning up at a debate. It's really difficult to get coverage for school. But you know, it's a tough thing going for a school board job.
Final word. If you can't answer our questions, you don't get the job. That's it. All right, let's take a break on that, and we'll be back right after this. Okay, and we are back from the break. So yeah, we're gonna take a trip back out of Burlington and travel a bit down the 403, the QW, into lively old Hamilton, where that's, as I said once before, and I'll say it again, Hamilton never ceases to amaze me. The fact that when the municipal election was first called, and the fact that the majority of the old council and Fred Eisberger were not running, I thought, well, there goes the chance for lively debate and discussion about policy, and it's going to be a boring old race. And then when Andrea Horwath declared her intention to seek the mayor's office, I thought, well, this is done. We're just going to see Andrea that's moonwalk into the mayor's office, and that's that. I am glad to say, folks, I was dead wrong on this through and through. I was pleasantly surprised to be wrong in this front. Yeah. So what's happening in the Hamilton mayor race?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that it's it's a 2 or 3 way race. And being a three. I mean, it's very difficult to tell in a world where there are no, we always complain that polls don't mean anything, or people often say that polls don't mean anything, apart from the fact that all that you've got, and we don't even have that in a municipal race. So we're all going on gut feelings and counting lawn signs, which is pretty useless. All I can say is counting lawn signs is between Loomis and Horwath in the parts of Hamilton that I've been to. And that includes some but some suburban parts of Hamilton and some downtown parts of Hamilton. I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, there definitely, if you go out Stony Creek way, you're going to see a few more Bratina signs, but not many. It's not overwhelming. And around where I am, I'd say I'd give the nod to Loomis, but it's close with Horwath right in there. Again, all I can say is, this is the impression I'm getting. It's fake. We're not taking sides. We're just trying to report what we've seen, and it's very insufficient and inadequate evidence. I'm not pretending that this is telling anybody how the election's really going, but to the best of our ability to tell, Keanin Loomis and Andrea Horwath are the front runners right now. Could be completely wrong because we just don't know, but yeah. As I said, again, social media, really, do we want to put too much faith in that? Judging by that, I don't see the Bratina camp taking the forefront. Are they likely to pick up a huge number of votes from older Hamiltonians who are going purely on name recognition, perhaps, who are more drawn to the policies that Bratina is advocating? Sure, maybe. Just going on the candidates' own websites, which ultimately are, that's their own words, unmitigated, unfiltered. All the candidates talk about accountability in housing, good stuff. Tina is alone in really hammering the kind of law and order thing, and I kind of have a beef with that whole law and order thing, which comes up in municipal races, because you guys aren't the guys who are in charge of law and order. I mean, yes, kind of through the Police Services Board, kind of, sorta, but not really. My understanding of how police budgets are voted on at a municipal level is that they're not decided by the municipality; they're decided by the Police Services Board, on which council members are a component. 3 council, in Hamilton, there are 3 council members, 3 provincial members, and 1 citizen. They set the budget. The council may vote on it at some point, but get this, they're not actually legally allowed to vote against the budget. The budget is a rubber stamp. So why in the hell would Bob Bratina talk about law and order when that ain't his responsibility?
Well, here's the thing with the law and order politician is I've always found that law and order politicians are the most cynical and laziest of all politicians. Here's the deep dark secret of Canadian politics at every level, municipal, provincial, and federal. Canada is a really safe place to live. Crime rates typically are not that high. We do not live in a cesspool of violence and criminality. It is not the case. There is crime, but it's we just aren't. We don't live in a place where you're scared to leave your front door. At least you shouldn't be. There's no rational reason why you should be. The criminality that does exist in Hamilton either is something far more than just hiring some beat cops are going to fix, or you're talking about you need to fix it through actual social programs, things like socialized housing, things like proper mental health and substance abuse programs, those kinds of things. Saying we're going to throw cops at it won't solve a thing. You're hiring cops and saying, well, now fix every social ill that we have in society. Your job is to do it on your shift. That's not fair to a cop, and it's not fair to the rest of us who say, well, these are complex issues that you need to address. And here's the thing. Bob Bratina knows this. The conservatives, when they preach the law and order ticket, they know this. It's a cynical view, and they're just hoping, well, I can scare up a few people to vote for me. The other,
scare the elderly, basically. Scare the older voters. Say that the enemy is at the gate. I mean, certainly the text messages that Bratina's been sending out all across Hamilton, and indeed to people considerably outside Hamilton, as far as Nova Scotia, I've heard, getting text messages saying, ironically, and now, I mean, this in itself is indicative of something. Not going after Andrea Horwath as the dangerous leftist, not even mentioning Andrea Horwath, going after Keanin Loomis as the dangerous leftist, the communist at the gates, who must be stopped, to prevent, chaos and anarchy and whatever. And it's like, here's a guy who the main kind of dig at over the last while was like, well, didn't you just come from the Chamber of Commerce? I mean, how much of a friend of the people are you going to be with that background? As a candidate, it's always surprising what ends up being the thing that people will throw at you. And I know I had a couple that was like, really, that's the thing you're going to throw at me? I didn't see that one coming.
Okay, let's dive in. Let's dive into that notion and pick that apart. So we're saying we don't really know who's the front runner, and I think you just answered the question, Roland, with that statement, because I honestly forgot that. Yeah, Bob Bratina is going after Keanin Loomis as the him and his supporters are going after Keanin Loomis as a radical lefty communist socialist plot to upend the social order in Hamilton if you elect him to mayor. Okay, but then let's go to the other contender, Andrea Horwath. We know that Andrea Horwath is going hard against Keanin Loomis. We know. I mean, one of the things that caught our eye was on social media. A former guest on this podcast, Laura Babcock, is on her O show. She had on Andrea Horwath. That interview has since become its own its own legend in its own right. But Laura Babcock has come out and basically has endorsed Keanin Loomis as her candidate of choice for mayor, like it or not. So Andrea Horwath is in turn going after Laura Babcock, outing her, calling her out by name in the Cable 14 mayoral debate, and Laura Babcock is saying that Andrea's supporters are coming after her on Twitter. I find it's interesting that both Andrea Horwath and Bob Bratina's people are going after Keanin Loomis as either inexperienced or too much of a radical lefty to be trusted with the mayorship. And again, I'm not from Hamilton. I don't care. whoever's going to win is going to win. But I find it interesting that when both of your opponents are focusing on you as you're the problem, you're what needs to be taken care of, and we can't allow you to be to win the seat. Something goes off in my head and says, maybe there's more to look at this person than what I might have thought before. My attention is drawn to Keanin Loomis, most because you have to say, why are the two veteran elder statesmen of Hamilton politics, Andrea Horwath, former leader of the opposition, former leader of the NDP, a staple of Hamilton Center and NDP politics in Hamilton, Bob Bratina, former mayor, MP of Hamilton East Stony Creek, longtime political staple of the Hamilton political scene, all going after Keanin Loomis. I question what's going on there. And the fact that, again, it's Hamilton politics, it's getting nasty. That's what Hamilton politics is about. But
it's getting personal, and it's disappointing when you see progressive going after progressive, basically, and this is the thing that always disappoints me. It always disappoints me. If you can get a cigarette paper between the NDP and the Liberals most weeks, you're lucky. They're both progressive centre-left parties. I don't actually buy. I've never bought that the NDP are dangerous leftists, and I've never bought that the Liberals are just as bad as the Conservatives in the normal run of things. And in fact, at various points, both have been on the other side of each other. Indeed, even while Andrea Horwath was leader of the NDP, she ran on a campaign. She ran on a platform considerably to the right of a Liberal candidate, who then went on to win the premiership. So all that stuff is like, we're all progressives. We're all trying to do a good thing here. Let's try and behave like bloody human beings. We're not going to endorse anybody. We don't think it really fits with the way that we operate. However, I absolutely defend Laura's right to choose a candidate that she wants to back. Just like the Toronto Sun can do that, so can podcasters and YouTube channel. You're allowed. You can do that. She's not hiding it. It's no secret. There's no secret agenda or anything like that. That's her right. I would say it was much wiser for a candidate, certainly a candidate of the stature of Andrea Horwath, to just take it on the chin and move on. It's not going to be what decides it one way or the other.
Here's the thing. You want to take out Keanin Loomis. Like, if you really want to take out Keanin Loomis, I don't think it's that hard. I really don't. He's a good enough guy, nice guy, has some interesting ideas. But you really want to take him out? Come out with a good policy plan. Like, that's it. Like that, and that's been Andrea's Achilles heel this entire elections. People have been saying, "What are you going to do, Andrea? Like, tell where's the platform details?" Bob we were looking at Bob Bratina's platform before we came on, and he's got a list of stuff on his website. You can like him or leave him. He actually does have a plan, folks. And I invite you to go votebratina.ca, take a look at it, and educate yourselves on what he would do. There's some things about it that I find are hypocritical, particularly Bob Bratina's stance on the LRT, considering that he resigned his seat as an MP federally over the federal government's funding of Hamilton's LRT project. And now he seems to be in favor of the LRT project and going as far as saying 30% of new and refurbished housing along that route should be inclusionary or inclusionary zoning. I find that an astounding about face for him, but so be it. The other issue that but the one thing I find shocking is that Andrea Horwath going after Laura Babcock for supporting Keanin Loomis. It seems a very amateur hour. You think somebody of Andrea Horwath's experience and stature would know. Like, who cares? Nobody goes after the editorial board of the Toronto Sun for supporting conservatives. Nobody goes after the Toronto Star editorial board for supporting liberals. You just know it's going to happen, and you say, okay, fine, that's your choice. You only go like it. It seems like bullying. It seems petty, and it seems shallow, and it's something not becoming of any elected official, in my opinion. You don't go after somebody for voicing their opinion. You don't go after somebody who because you didn't win them over.
And you don't turn a non-story into a story. You don't turn.
Yeah.
I mean, Laura Babcock gets good numbers listening to her show, but we're dealing in the kind of new media world where in a very fractured. We're not CHCH. We're not, and I don't think Laura would claim to be either. But she's influential, absolutely. She's doing a great job over there, and congratulations to her for doing that. And goodness me, I hope she keeps on doing it for a long time. But as a candidate, you don't turn something that is really a non-issue and make it into an issue. It wasn't necessary. It is amateur hour, and it's kind of nasty, and it's not. Really, you could have just said nothing. And like you say, talk about. Come out with and sure, I get the kind of irony of me saying this when I say, come out with policy proposals, because, in many ways, no candidate for municipal office can actually come out with policy proposals, because that's not the way local government works. I get that. However, you can come out with strong aspirations, and the mayors in particular, the mayoral candidates in particular, can come out with, this is a key aspiration for my term in office. And yeah, there's stuff on Andrea's website as well. I mean, it's there's good stuff here. I feel to an extent that Keanin has forced the other candidates to be better. And the thing that he did that was best, and which is basically outsiders who have not run for office before do not generally succeed when they go for the top job. It's like, run for council. That would usually be the advice I would give someone if they asked it, if they thought my advice was worth anything, which they might well not. But nevertheless, he got out early, and he kind of dominated the field for about 6 months before the other guys got their acts together. And sure, Andrea was still at the province at that time, and she's leader of the opposition, for goodness sake, But still, he got out there. He did things the way you have to do in municipal politics if you're going to get out anywhere, which is like, get out early, get your message out first. That is absolutely the most important thing you can do. And he did that, and he's turned himself into a credible candidate that the other two leading candidates seem to see as the threat, because they're talking about him, not the other one. Mm-hmm. It does speak volumes. I mean, is it strong evidence? Maybe we're all completely misreading this. Maybe
it's not strong evidence, but I do say, like, where are people talking about? And nobody is talking. I don't think anybody's talking about Bob Bratina. Like, the only time I've talked about Bob Bratina or seen anybody talk about Bob Bratina is you, Roland, right now. That was it. that was when I've seen anybody really talking about Bob Bratina about in this election. To me, it is between Keanin Loomis and Andrea Horwath. I'm not saying it's a shoo-in for Keanin, but my God, is he giving Andrea a run for her money? And I find that it's, I'm looking at how Andrea Horwath is running this campaign, and I say, like, this might be why she's not premier right now. Is that people, again, we've said this so many times on this podcast. This is it, like, and I'm going to beat this dead horse until it is deader in the ground. People want big ideas. People want bold. They are tired of milk toast. Let's just shuffle the deck chairs around on the deck of the ship and call it a day. They're tired. It has not worked. We have not seen government since we talked about this the other day, Roland, you and I. We haven't seen government at any level of government do any meaningful policy or any meaningful actions since 1992, 1993 maybe. It's been this content to just, okay, let's shuffle things around a bit. Let's see if we can balance a budget. If we can, we can. If we can't, we can't. But let's just not piss off anyone. And that's kind of worked so far, but it's not working. The system is falling apart on people. Things aren't getting done. And we're looking at this and the people are getting fed up with it, and they're looking for people who are coming in with bold ideas. I want to see people with bold ideas get elected. If they don't follow through on it, fine. We turf them out. That's the system. They say they want to do it. If they can't get it done, you kick them out. You get somebody else in there who will get it done, and you keep doing that until change happens. And I find that Andrea Horwath is still that old school of thinking of undersell, overperform, except she has not had a chance to overperform because nobody's bought into what she's underselling so far.
And going back to the provincial election, and I cannot say this obviously not. My history is I volunteered for the Ontario Liberals for a decade and more. Okay, so there's the background. Call me biased if you want, but I would promise every NDP listener to this podcast, or every NDP sympathetic person who might listen to this podcast, every Conservative who might listen to this podcast, I couldn't give less of a stuff about the Ontario Liberal Party or the Liberal Party of Canada or any party. I don't care about them. I joined the Liberals because where I lived, they were the organisation with the best chance of getting a progressive candidate into Parliament or into the legislature. It made sense where I lived right then, and it was a good organisation. It was and we damn well won. I mean, only once, but we did, and at the federal level, considerable more success. But so I'm trying to make the case here again. I don't care about the party stuff. If you think that I have some liberal bias going on when I say what I'm about to say, it's nothing to do with that. And you don't know how I voted at the last election either. So, the NDP platform, we went through all the platforms in the last election. And I'm going to say right now, Stephen Del Duca was a horror show as a leader of the Ontario Liberals, but the platform was a good platform. Mm-hmm. It was, again, cigarette papers between it and the NDP and the Green thing. Basically, those three parties ran the same platform with a few differences. Of the three, the NDP one was by far the weakest. There were things in there that were really just crazy, off the wall, stupid, and honestly had been written by certain unions. I mean, there was something about basically abolishing any private company from providing road services and building to municipalities. I was like, what the friggin' hell? I mean, I know exactly where that came from, but it makes no flipping sense. There were other things in there which were just weak and lacking in detail. And it's like, seriously, after all this time, after being, finally, you're in second place. You're the one people will turn to and going, please God, if we hate Doug Ford, we need you to come through. And you didn't. It was weak. It was weak when you lost to Kathleen Wynne. Kathleen Wynne never should have been Premier of Ontario because the Ontario Liberals at that time were dying on their ass. And she not only did she win, she got a majority because you completely misplayed that election. Like, massively misplayed that election.
But on that note, when Kathleen Wynne basically gave up in her last go as Premier, she literally said, "I give up. I'm not going to win." And you still couldn't put the goal. You couldn't put the puck in the net, and every NDPer comes and says, "Oh, it's Kathleen Wynne's fault." It was Kathleen Wynne's fault. Why wasn't Kathleen Wynne the freaking Premier? She had that much power. Why wouldn't she put herself in? It made no sense. And that's what we're coming down to again in this municipal election, is that redundancy of you got to have bold ideas. People are itching for it. They want to see what are you going to do differently? The number one issue is housing. People are worried their housing is becoming unaffordable. Rent is becoming unaffordable. They don't want an idea of, oh, I'm going to work with city council and we're going to come up with the best. No, I don't want to know that you're going to work on a plan. I want to know what your plan is now. Day one, you get elected, you're going to go in and say, we need to start working on this. What are you going to, how long is it going to take you to get a plan? A year to do consultations and all that other nonsense? Forget it. Nobody wants to hear about a consultation. Nobody wants to hear about another chance for developers and landlords and whoever else, tenant boards and tenant rights activists, all to get in and muck it up. People want action now. We've been waiting 30 years for progressive action, for governments to get this stuff done, and we're getting fed up with it. And I find that's why again, I'm coming down to Keanin Loomis, not because he's got the best ideas. I think some of his ideas are kind of weak, but he's the only one putting forward real credible ideas that seem to be out of the box. And people are saying, well, hell, he can't do any worse than the previous guys. Let's give him a shot.
Well, his campaign thus far hasn't insulted anybody's intelligence. And that's far too rare a thing, you know. I mean, I've been watching some of the first-time candidates in other municipalities. So in Burlington, in the ward I ran last time, Ward 2, which is the downtown ward in Burlington, there's a couple of people running against Lisa Kearns. Lisa Kearns has been on the podcast. Lisa Kearns is the person who beat me. And I'm really not going to talk about her or about that ward, but you know, there's a guy running there. I can't remember what his name is. Don't particularly want to give him the publicity. He seems like a complete asshole. And he's being so nasty and so petty, and he's trying to get Lisa Kearns reported to the commissioner of baseball, I was going to say, whatever the hell, the integrity commissioner, for releasing some piece of information that was completely boring and uninteresting and anybody could have predicted. And we want them to be open and public anyway, so don't report people when they actually do announce something that is a piece of information the public could do with. Don't be a hypocrite. And he's going after her because of all the buildings that were approved in Burlington, as if you know, the OLT doesn't exist, and as if, you know, a single councillor has the remotest bloody say in what gets approved in Burlington. And the point of mentioning him at all is not that his campaign is a piece of crap, although it is. It's the fact that he's just not being honest about anything, and he's also not putting forward a platform of his own other than, oh, this person's terrible, vote for me. You know, and it's like, okay, he's a first timer, you know, maybe he's just a moron. Then you look at Andrea Horwath and Bob Bratina. It's like, here's Bob Bratina doing a law and order thing, running for a job that has no bloody say in law and order. Here's Andrea Horwath taking pot shots at somebody who runs a bloody podcast for daring not to support her. And doing this stuff about, oh, you weren't born in Hamilton, or you're not from Hamilton, or you haven't lived in Hamilton long enough. Good God, that is the lowest of the low, you know. So, again, this is not an endorsement for Keanin Loomis. I'm just saying that he hasn't insulted our intelligence the way that the other two have with those two things alone. You know, real amateur hour stuff. Amateur hour like the guys in Burlington doing whatever the hell he's doing. You know, do better, people. I mean, I expect better from a first-time candidate. I certainly expect better from people of the stature of Bob Bratina and Andrea Horwath.
You know what? Let's call it a day on that one. Thanks very much, everyone, for listening. We'll be back Tuesday with more 905er. Bye-bye. That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns, or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
looking to make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.